that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the famous philanthropist, Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
And Tom, by the way, is a philanthropist. He helps a lot of people a lot of the time. Anyway, every day I get up early, and honestly, I have to tell you the truth. The reason I get up early is not to do my blog. The reason I get up early is because
Let the cat out.
Over 70 years old, and you know, you wake up early when you're over 70 years old. At least a lot of people do. So I go to bed when I'm tired at 9 or something like that, and I wake up at 4 or 3:30. It's just what happens, you know.
Yeah.
If I were a teenager, I'd go to bed at 9 and wake up at 10. Anyway, I get up early. I also like to finish the blog and so forth, so people who want to see it first thing in the morning can. I try to get it up, everything done by 9 o'clock. But I really look haggard on this screen.
You got to stop all this high living.
I do. Anyway, I do my blog, which is geoharvey.com, and I post up there news on energy and climate change, and I put up a synopsis to each of about 10 or 15 articles every day with a link to all of them, each of them. And Tom and I get together on Thursday mornings and discuss what's happened in the previous week. So we start a week before this. We're starting on September 21st, and you can find the items that we talk about by going to the blog geoharvey.com, and you can click on the calendar, and it'll take you to the day's postings. And we will, as I said, try to keep you apprised of what day these come from.
Well, as I've mentioned before in the show, some of these articles are very well developed and very good to read, but we don't have time to concentrate on them. I mean, some of these we could do a whole show on.
Yes.
Some of these we actually have.
Yes, that's true.
But I'll try and alert you to some of the ones that I find compelling. If you think...
I'll forget to alert people to the ones I find compelling, which is one of the reasons why Tom is so valuable. He's a valuable guy. Philanthropist and an alerter. Anyway, we're starting with an article from Power Engineering, and we've got a photograph for this.
We do.
We do.
Let's see if I can find it.
Yeah, there it is on the screen.
Bingo.
On the monitor. There you go.
Now, what is that we're looking at?
We're looking at a wind farm, but the photograph was not attributed, and it didn't have a caption, so I just put it up without a caption.
Looks like a wind farm to me.
It looks like a wind farm. If it isn't a wind farm, there's something wrong, but you know, there it is.
Well, it's about GM.
Yes.
General Motors to power all Ohio, Indiana manufacturing plants with wind. They've got an ambitious program going. It is.
Every General Motors manufacturing plant in Ohio and Indiana will now be completely powered by wind energy thanks to a 200 megawatt power purchase agreement. The automaker is now the sole user of the 100 megawatt Northwest Ohio wind farm, and another 100 megawatts will come from the Hilltopper wind project in Illinois. So,
well, General Motors has set a goal to use 100% renewable energy in its operation.
Yes.
They haven't set a time limit, but that is their goal.
When are they going to set a goal to produce 100% renewable powered cars?
Well, that's going to be set for them, I think. It's happening.
You know what? I bet they will set it. I bet nobody will tell them to set it. I bet
they'll set it.
They just do themselves.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, takeaway from the article is technology is driving solutions for mobility and safety in our vehicles, as well as the new energy solutions that build them.
Yes.
So they're on top of things.
Yes, they are. Absolutely.
Moving right along.
Moving right along, we have an article from Clean Technica, which is about Nicaragua.
Nicaragua to sign Paris Agreement, leaving the United States alone with Syria.
Yeah.
How strange.
What is the name of the guy who's the head of Syria? Assad and Trump.
Assad.
Yeah. A pair. There it is. Assad and Trump. They reports from Nicaragua say that President Daniel Ortega has confirmed his country will finally sign the Paris Climate Agreement. This means the United States and Syria would be the only two countries in the world that are not active parties to it. The Nicaraguan position has been that the Paris Climate Agreement did not go far enough.
So he's not protesting it.
No, he never did.
Yeah.
Well, he did in a sense. He was saying it lets the big polluters off the hook.
Yeah, he did say that, right.
So and another thing too is that the United States is technically part of this until it officially withdraws, which it cannot do for several years.
Okay.
So that leaves Syria out, and what we're aspiring to be is like Syria. That's a chilling prospect. I don't like saying that.
An appropriate goal, isn't it?
Yeah. Wow. I hope that's the only thing we ever decide to do that's like Syria. Okay.
Moving right along.
Okay, we have an article here from the Washington Examiner.
The states supporting the Paris climate deal claim status as the world's third largest economy.
The U.S. Climate Alliance, a coalition of states backing the Paris Climate Accord, announced that North Carolina had just joined in defiance of President Trump's decision to exit the United Nations Pact. Washington Governor Jay Inslee said, "If we were a country, we would be the third largest economy of any nation in the world." Now,
that's interesting.
I want to point out that these states represent more than half the people in the United States.
Well, okay. According to this one, we represent 40% of the U.S. economy.
Yeah.
So that's the economy, but you're saying the population.
Well, maybe I'm including the population of all of those states and all the cities and towns and counties that have said that they were going in on the Paris Climate Accord. I might be doing that in my mind.
Okay.
But it is more than half the people in the United States are represented by governments that have stuck in with the Paris Climate Accord.
The interesting thing came out about this article. They're talking about solar, and I just never looked at it from this particular standpoint. Solar gives us the ability to add power capacity in incremental steps.
Yes.
Allowing us to match the growing demand for electricity in the region.
There's
So they go little by little by little. It makes sense.
Absolutely.
Makes sense to me.
And all we've needed, in addition to solar, has been wind power, batteries, and the other renewables. They all kind of fit together in a pretty respectable little bundle.
Well, they certainly can. I mean, you know, whether you got wind or whether you got hydro depends a lot on geography. But yeah.
Yep. Okay, should we move on?
I think we should.
We are up to Friday, September 22nd. And we have a picture here of San Francisco.
I'll get that picture
And I just
up here.
dropped my glasses, so
That is San Francisco.
there we go. That is San Francisco. I had an uncle who had a home on an island in San Francisco Bay.
That sounds nice.
Not, by the way,
Not
Alcatraz.
Alcatraz.
Yeah.
San Francisco and Oakland sue oil companies for role in climate warming and rising seas. Now, this goes along with what we talked about last week.
Right. This is in Clean Technica. The cities of San Francisco and Oakland have filed separate lawsuits against 5 of the largest oil companies in the world, public documents show. They are suing Chevron, BP, ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil, and Royal Dutch Shell for the roles played by those companies in anthropogenic climate warming and rising sea levels.
By the way, in this article, there's 2 very interesting maps.
Yes.
Maps of San Francisco showing what San Francisco would look like if there's a 25-foot rise in ocean height
Right.
and a 200-foot rise. Now,
Right.
these are extremes.
Yeah,
Okay, but
they
if
are
there's
extremes.
a 25-foot rise, San Francisco loses about 10 or 15% of its area.
And that
If there's
puts
a 200-foot rise, it loses more than half of it.
Yes.
It looks like a whole bunch of islands.
a bunch of islands. That's right. And the island that my uncle lived on
would probably be gone.
Oh, long gone. Yeah. It was connected to land by a what do you call it? when a road is built, like a bridge that's
Causeway?
causeway.
Yeah.
It was connected by a causeway.
Well, the cities are seeking billions of dollars in damage money.
And they aren't the only ones that are going to be doing
No,
this.
this is just these
This is just the start.
cities.
And there was an interesting article in the news today, which we won't talk about today, but may talk about next week, about the change that has gone with the federal courts backing lawsuits, being making judgments in favor of lawsuits over climate change.
Well, what they're basing this on, the companies have created a public nuisance. Now, they
Yep.
didn't make this up. This was what was happening in 1980 against the tobacco companies.
Yes.
And they won.
Yes.
It's public nuisance.
Yes. And
So, stay tuned, folks.
yeah, and the people who are defending the oil companies are the same people who failed to defend the tobacco companies.
You mean the lawyers?
The organizations.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, this is the first of many lawsuits, I think.
Oh, many.
Now,
many.
we talked about that last week.
Yes, we did.
It's coming, folks.
It is. We have an item coming up from Georgetown University, The Hoya.
The Hoya.
The Hoya.
I was trying to figure out why they call themselves the Hoya, and they don't seem to have a good reason. It was apparently
whatever.
some sort of a cheer for their sports team back in 1890 or something.
Oh, there you go.
But nobody knows why. But in any case, getting to Georgetown, La Jolla, the Hoya, solar panels to provide half of campus energy.
Georgetown University partnered with Aegis Energy USA to build a solar power system to provide nearly 50% of the campus's electricity by 2019 to 2020 academic year. Aegis will install 105,000 solar panels on a 518-acre property in Maryland. The panels are expected to produce 75,000 megawatts of power. Megawatt hours of power each year.
So that 518 acres is about a square mile.
A little
So
less.
so this is a very, very large array.
It's a large array. Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
And Georgetown is committed to reduce its carbon footprint 50% by the year 2020, a goal which they met in 2014.
Yes.
They've done it already.
They're running past. Maybe they're going to try to get 100% by 2020. It looks like it is from this what they're saying.
Moving
here.
right along.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we got an
Now
image
we're up
coming up here.
to a mess.
Yeah, let's get this guy.
This is from the Chicago Tribune, and this picture is a picture of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and I think people should be aware of the fact that this problem in San Juan is just excruciating.
From what I've been reading about Puerto Rico, it is in very difficult shape.
And we've got, unfortunately...
And they don't have the money to rebuild.
And not only that, but there are laws that prevent us from helping. Believe it or not, there's a law that says the only way you can take ship products from American ports to American ports is by using American ships. And there aren't enough American ships to help.
That's a brilliant law.
It's almost 100 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway.
Let's look quickly at that picture again.
Yeah.
Those electrical poles you're looking at there, they're lying on the ground.
Yes.
They look like they're sticking up in the air. They're lying on the ground.
Yeah.
They got hit hard.
Did you read I think you did read the title.
Puerto Rico's I didn't.
Oh.
Puerto Rico's power company was already bankrupt.
Yeah.
Then Maria hit.
What you got is just a mess. Hurricane Maria has dealt a new blow to Puerto Rico's bankrupt electric company, causing widespread power outages and imposing costly repairs on a utility that was already struggling with more than $9 billion in debt, poor service, and sky-high rates. Puerto Rico's electric rates are already more than twice the national average. Maybe what we should do is put together a charity that would package solar setup that people with batteries that could just be installed.
Well, you're getting ahead of me. I'm kind of thinking about the same thing. This could turn out to be a blessing in disguise for Puerto Rico because they have an outdated transmission system. The generating stations are all in the south of Puerto Rico. The population is more in the north. So they got these transmission lines, long distance, really doing not a whole heck of a lot for the center of the country. Now, when they rebuild, if they do it right, they're going to put distributed power throughout Puerto Rico.
Well, I hope so.
Instead of these two very large, heavy oil-burning plants that they got. So it could turn out to be a blessing in disguise.
Well, I hope so. But I don't have any expectations. I know that Donald Trump has said that he's going to help these people, but I was really pleased to discover that Donald Trump knew that Puerto Rico was part of the United States. And I don't.
Somebody whispered.
I want to tell everybody. I once worked with a crew in a chemical factory with a crew of Puerto Ricans. They were the best crew I have ever worked with.
That's interesting.
They were absolutely marvelous. They were stunning. They were so good. They would get all of their work done, an 8-hour shift in 4.5 hours, clean up everything, and then spend 3 hours playing casino. But they did a marvelous job. So, how can you fault them for that? Meanwhile, the day shift, which had very few Puerto Ricans on it, would do half as much work with twice as many men and leave a mess behind, which the night shift, the Puerto Ricans, cleaned up. They were wonderful. They knew how to work. They knew how to work together.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, this whole Puerto Rican thing is kind of things have been going on there for years that we know nothing about. But they're bankrupt. They're probably bankrupt because they've been systematically looted, by the corporations.
Why would they care about Puerto Rico? It's not part of the United States.
Well, if you can loot something, who cares where it is?
Well, they would loot it if we're Vermont. You know that. They loot it out of our pockets already. I'm sorry, I'm full of complaints. But, there you go.
Let's move along to Saturday, September 23rd.
Let's do that. And we've got an article here from Bloomberg BNA.
Are hurricane winds of change for insurers' climate risk?
Oh, man.
This is a good article on how insurance companies work. If that's what interests you, read this article because it goes into depth.
Right.
And it's not what you might think it is.
The insurance industry faces a long-term challenge as climate change makes natural disasters more severe. The Trump administration's push to axe some of the tools insurers need to prepare for disasters could force companies to take a more public position on climate change. This business about stopping the use of NASA for investigating climate-related problems is
that's just politics.
Not good for the insurance industry.
No, it's not.
And
these guys are based on science, really.
Yeah.
Based on research.
The insurance industry.
And, this is how they make their money.
Yeah.
They're trying to bring more money in than they're putting out.
Yep.
And the way to do that is trying to figure out what they're going to have to put out.
Well, I did a calculation last year or earlier this year, of the change in costs for flood insurance in the United States. And these are the premiums. In 1978, Americans paid $82 million in flood insurance premiums. Now, you would expect...
Doesn't sound like much.
Doesn't sound like much. You would expect that inflation and an increase in population and an increase in real estate costs relative to the value of the dollar would combine to push that up by a factor of about 5.5 or 6. So
not much.
From 3.5 times just from inflation. So we've had substantial increase in population. So you would expect that it would have gone from the $82 million to maybe $500 million. But it didn't go up by a factor of 6. It went up by a factor of 43.
Wow.
How do you explain that? Well, let's see. How do you spell Chinese hoax? Oh, dear.
Oh, boy. And they're going to go up a lot more after this last series of
Oh,
hurricanes.
this last series of hurricanes is appalling. It's so bad. I've read estimates that it's costing $300 billion.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, we had Hurricane Harvey, which was the most expensive hurricane ever to hit the United States.
Yep.
We had Hurricane Irma, which was the most powerful storm ever to develop in the North Atlantic. And then we had Hurricane Maria, which is shutting down a commonwealth that's in the United States for months. I don't even know how you evaluate the cost of that. Anyway, that piece was from Bloomberg BNA. And
one of the many tentacles of Bloomberg, all of which do a pretty good job.
they do.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So let's move along here.
Let's
We got
do
an
that.
image coming up.
Yeah, from Clean
And
Technica.
there is the image. And now you can see it.
There you go. I really like this picture because it gives you a picture of a solar array from an angle that most people never see.
For sure. For
Although,
time for a mustard lion on its belly.
Yeah, if this were in the UK, the sheep would see it that way. Got a title?
I'm trying to figure out which one we're on.
U.S. solar industry could
There we
be.
go.
There
Yep.
you go. I can
U.S.
read it if
solar
you want.
industry could be devastated by today's tariff ruling, may lead to crushing tariffs.
The U.S. International...
This is scary.
It is, yes. The U.S. International Trade Commission granted a petition for relief from cheaper imported solar panels by two bankrupt U.S. manufacturers, but the remedy for the relief will likely mean tariffs that are job-crushing for solar installers.
If I read into this, two foreign-owned U.S. manufacturers of solar cells, which are bankrupt.
Foreign-owned.
Huh?
Foreign-owned. Didn't you say foreign-owned?
Foreign-owned.
Yeah.
Owned by Chinese and Germans.
Okay.
Okay.
They're owned by Chinese and Germans, but they happen to be in the United
America.
States.
Okay. And they're losing money because of imported Chinese cells, solar cells,
Yep.
that are cheaper than they can make them.
Yep.
So they want the federal government to slap a tariff on the Chinese stuff so that they can make money for the Germans and the Chinese.
At the expense of the U.S. solar installers and ultimately U.S. customers.
And this is also interesting. The companies themselves didn't institute this procedure.
Yeah.
It was the lender, the bank.
The bank.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. It was an American
we got
bank.
a-
No doubt an
listen.
American bank.
It's an American bank, yep.
There you go.
New York-based investment firm.
Owned by Chinese and Germans.
I don't know about that.
I don't either,
And
truthfully.
this is a takeaway from it. So a $29 billion industry may be destroyed because one greedy lender was trying to squeeze a few extra bucks out of a bad investment. Welcome to the madness that is America in the age
Well,
of Trump.
I will tell you, I don't think the solar industry in the United States is going to be destroyed. I don't think that's going to happen. And the reason is because it has got to a point where the efficiencies are kicking in, and even if solar panels, the cost of solar panels increases substantially, the reduced overall cost will mean that we will continue installing solar. Maybe
well, there's
not as many.
two aspects of solar this article is about. One is producing the solar panels.
Yes.
And that's what essentially this is about.
Mm-hmm.
But the second one is installing them.
Yes.
Which is a big industry now.
It's a big industry, but only a portion of the costs for that industry come from the solar panels. And,
oh yeah, most of it comes from installation and hooking everything up.
And the cost of advertising and the cost of getting the permissions, and there's a lot of costs involved, and a lot of those costs have been brought down. I mean, remember that we're getting more. Number one, we're getting more efficient. Right. Number two, hardware to install these things is being manufactured that never existed before. Exactly. So. And they're getting more sophisticated. The Sunshot Initiative, which was supposed to bring the cost of grid scale solar power down below $1 a watt, was by 2020 has already been achieved. It's there now. Yep. So I don't think this is. I think the warnings are real, and I think they're a problem, but I don't think they're quite as big a problem as this particular article says.
I'll go along with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I won't argue
We
that.
are up to September 24th. No, we're not. We're up to Clean Technica. Another article that article was by Clean Technica.
This is
The next
also a
one
very
too.
interesting
Yeah.
little article. Biodegradable material could replace most plastic used to wrap and preserve food.
This is fascinating to me. You know, with a little bit of a background in chemistry, I'm fascinated by this. A professor of agriculture and biological engineering at the College of Agricultural Sciences at Penn State has developed a solution for about half the plastic waste that goes to American landfills. After 10 years of research, he has found biodegradable material that can be used in place of plastic used to wrap and preserve food.
So it's kind of a biodegradable plastic.
It's a biodegradable plastic. Not the only one. We've had them before.
Yeah, we've talked about, I remember reading a long, long time ago about a biodegradable plastic that was made from potatoes.
Well, this particular one is made from cellulose, as I recall, which could come from wood, it could come from straw, it could come from lots of
It's heavily
places.
based with cellulose and also something from shellfish.
From shellfish,
Yeah.
from shrimp particularly,
Yeah,
the shells
yeah.
of shrimp and things of that nature. I would imagine crabs and so forth also would go into this. And it would be interesting to see shrimp farmed for their shells in addition to their meat.
Interesting thing about this, we've talked about this already. There's a lot of plastic in the waste stream. A lot of it's winding up in the ocean. Last week we talked about it, and the article said that by 2050 there'd be more plastic in the ocean than fish.
Yes. We've got to do something
gotta
about
do
this. The
something.
plastic is killing birds, it's killing fish. We've just got to do something about that. Anyway, should we move on?
Yeah, this
Okay.
is, well, basically this is recyclable, compostable, biodegradable plastic.
Yeah.
And it's a step in the right direction.
Which means that it could be used essentially for compost. It could
Oh,
go
yeah.
into farm fields to
Absolutely.
grow more food.
So we got a picture
Okay,
coming up
we
here.
do indeed. This also is from Clean Technica. And
Drunken trees.
That is a drunken forest, and we will explain it.
Even with huge carbon emissions reductions, the world's periglacial zones, which is where the permafrost is, to disappear by 2100.
The world,
This is like
yeah,
the tundra of Canada.
yeah. The world's periglacial zones, home to nearly all of the world's permafrost, will almost completely disappear by the year 2100, even in the most optimistic scenarios about greenhouse gas emission reductions, a study says. As all that permafrost melts, vast quantities of methane and carbon dioxide will be released,
That's the scary part.
which makes climate change all the worse.
Yeah, that's. We did talk about this. We've shown some pictures of
Right.
buildings that collapsed because their foundations were.
Yep. And what you're seeing here on the screen is a picture of a bunch of trees which grew up straight.
Yep.
And they are no longer straight because their roots were resting on top of what is essentially they were in soil on top of stone, except the stone wasn't stone,
It was
ice.
Yeah.
And the ice is melted, so all of a sudden they were on top of mud and they went over in every direction. So that's, and we've seen buildings that this has happened to, as you said, Tom.
Absolutely.
And we've
Absolutely.
seen, I've seen potholes that have developed in the tundra, and the world is changing. People in places, there are a lot of people who don't see it. It's happening in Vermont. It's happening, right now in Vermont. People don't realize.
There's permafrost in Vermont?
Not permafrost, but the world is changing in Vermont.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, the maples are migrating north.
The maples are migrating north. What are we going to do without maple trees? There goes a lot of our fall color. There goes all of our maple syrup.
Speaking about fall color, have you noticed this year's fall colors?
What fall colors?
That's the
exactly
point.
the point.
That's exactly the point.
Well, they're saying that in the future, and we're talking about a few decades from now, Vermont will just not have any fall colors. Although there is hope we could get trees from North Carolina and bring them up here, because they have trees in North Carolina that produce beautiful fall colors.
But nothing matches the maples.
Nothing matches maples. Maples are a gift from God.
Well, they are.
Yeah, I suppose all of them are. But, you know, our maple trees are threatened. Our birches and beeches and ashes and hemlocks and spruces and firs are all threatened. The ridgetop habitats that anti-wind people want to save are unsalvageable. They're toast because deciduous trees are moving up to the ridge lines because and this has already happened because the temperatures in the coldest night of the winters for the state of Vermont have gone up by about 10 degrees.
Yep.
So
not the coldest day. It's the coldest temperature of the coldest days.
Of the coldest nights, actually.
Coldest nights, yep.
And that's the thing that prevents deciduous trees from growing on ridgelines. It's the thing that prevented Lyme disease from spreading in Vermont. A lot of people are sick because of climate change, and they don't know that it's because of climate change.
Well, let's get into a little politics here.
A little politics.
They voted for Trump. Obama's solar panels saved them from Irma's wrath.
Hurricane Irma knocked out the power while residents of Titusville, Florida, sheltered in the Apollo Elementary School. Pagans. Apollo is a pagan god. But Classroom 408 had electricity thanks to an economic stimulus program set in motion by President Barack Obama. So they were able to be in a classroom that had electricity.
Well, yeah, this program produced something like 150 schools in Florida, where each of these schools had solar panels, I guess, small amount of electricity, lights, power, and you could recharge your phones, and
batteries.
These people and batteries. And these people are living in those classrooms now, or at least they were.
We've got problems. And, you know, the hurricane season's only half over.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's a little more than half over.
There's still a chance.
Yes, there's... Okay, should we move on from that one?
Let's move along here.
Okay, we are at an article from the Farmington Daily Times. I always think of Farmington as being in Connecticut, but this Farmington is in California.
This is a different Farmington.
Yeah.
Aztec reduces dependency on fossil fuels. You're going to tell us where Aztec is.
When I read this, and this happens every day. It happens every day. I come across some article that refers to a place. You know, and really the worst of these is when they say Springfield. Like, how many Springfields are there in this country? There's almost one in every state. But Aztec, I had to look up. You know, I said, wait a minute, those people are long gone. Aztec is a city in California, and it's actually a fairly, maybe I'm thinking of a different place. It's a city in California. 2 years ago, 85% of the electricity in Aztec, California came from fossil fuels. Now, hydropower supplies 37% of the electricity, and 6% comes from a solar farm. Last month, officials from Guzman Energy, which sells power to the city, told the city commissioners that Aztec could get 40% of its power from wind in the near future, and that would bring it up to about 85% of its power.
They're moving in the right direction.
Well, in 2 years, they're going from 15% to 85%, and actually,
you're flopping it.
Anybody could do that.
Yeah,
you know. Because what they're doing is they're just changing the source that they're buying. Okay, we are up to Monday, September 25th.
Flow of natural gas used to generate half of Israel's electrical power halted following pipeline fault. And there's an image.
There is an image coming up.
And that's a natural gas.
That's Israeli natural gas. That's Tamar natural gas rig. Israel's
that is the rig that we're talking about.
Well, it is a rig. I don't know. My guess is there's more than one rig. But Israel's supply of natural gas has been halted after a crack was discovered in a single pipeline linking the Tamar field to Israeli users. The fault in a pipe and a processing platform forced the Tamar partners to stop supplies of natural gas, which is used to generate more than half of Israel's electric power, until repairs are completed this week. This is from an organization called Haaretz, Haaretz.
Yeah, that's a newspaper in Israel.
Yeah.
Pretty good one, too.
But this really kind of displays a problem when you have all of your eggs in one basket.
Well, they only have one basket.
Well,
This is about 50 miles off the coast of Haifa.
yeah,
It's out there in the Med.
it's out in the Mediterranean, and you know, you have a crack appear in a pipe, and that shuts down
You gotta
half the
shut it down.
electricity in the entire country.
And it's this what is the name of the company? Tamar. This
Tamar.
Tamar field is the primary natural gas supply for Israel, and it exports some of that to Jordan.
Right.
So all of their eggs are in this one basket.
All the eggs were in that one basket, that one pipeline,
Yeah.
and one leak in one pipeline shut down half the energy. And of course, they've been building solar in Israel, and they could put up wind. I'm sure they have put up some. And the same thing for Jordan. And Palestine has been putting up solar power. But
Well, Israel's
not-
got deserts, and wherever there's a desert, there's a wind.
yeah, and wherever there's a desert, there's likely to be a lot of sun.
And it's likely to be a lot of sun. So they got potential for
They've got
wind
the
and for
potential,
solar.
yes. And of course, they could do other things too. They could, you know, wherever you've got human beings, you're going to have the feedstock for biogas.
I put the picture back up because
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that's a pretty big thing.
Yep,
If you look in the back, there's a little red thing there, sort of sticking up.
yep,
That's a crane.
yep. And on the upper left corner of the basic part of that is an octagon-shaped thing. That's a
That's a helipad.
It's it's a landing place for helicopters.
Yep.
So you know, this is not a trivial sized project. And there's probably a lot of people who live on that thing.
Oh, for sure.
For
Oh,
sure.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Well, let's move along.
Our next
here.
item is from Maui News.
Maui.
Maui.
UHMC. You're going to tell us what that is.
I will indeed.
On track to reach net zero energy goal next year.
The University of Hawaii Maui College is on track to reach a goal of 100% renewable portfolio standard for electricity by 2020 at the latest. Thanks to a tremendous effort both on campus and in the community, it's actually aiming to reach that goal in 2018. Doing so, it may be the first college campus in the U.S. to reach net zero.
Interesting.
Isn't it?
Hawaii is the first state in the nation to set a 100% renewable portfolio standard for the electricity sector by 2045.
Yes.
And they're on their way.
They're on their way. Although
Way ahead of the game.
I have to tell you, I think that 2045 for the electricity sector,
They'll do it
I think
before
people
that.
will stumble into 100% electricity by 2045.
I think so too.
Because the cost of renewable power is so low compared to the cost of everything else. It's crazy.
Well, everything has to be shipped to Hawaii.
Yes.
You know,
And so if they can,
everything's expensive.
yep, and they have been traditionally getting their electricity by burning oil.
Yeah, diesel.
So it's
Diesel
and
and turbines, huh? Oil burning turbines.
yep.
Yep.
It's an expensive proposition. So we are up to stltoday.com.
Yeah, let's see here. Amaran experiments with self-sufficient microgrid, and we got an image coming up here.
We
too.
do. When Hurricane
This is the
That's
grid
the
we're going to
actual
be talking
grid, yeah.
about. Yep.
When Hurricane Sandy slammed the East Coast in 2012, Princeton University was kept going by a microgrid. And a lot of people forget about the fact that everything else closed down, but Princeton just kept sailing right along. The resilience afforded by microgrids has captured attention even in areas shielded from hurricanes such as Illinois, where the St. Louis-based utility, Amaran, is testing applications of the technology. So we've got a St. Louis-based company testing this, and this is in Champaign, Illinois.
Well, microgrids are going to be definitely a part of the future of electricity.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be seeing them popping up all over the place. And the beautiful thing about microgrids, they can be what they call islanded.
Yeah.
If the grid goes down, they can keep going.
Well, you know, one of the things that occurred to me a couple of years ago, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, is that microgrids can support each other. you can attach a microgrid to a different microgrid, and they can
This is true.
be together
Yeah.
to make up for each other's
Cooperate with each other.
cooperate with each other. And you could build a network of microgrids that cooperate with each other.
Exactly.
And if you do that, then you've got really a big redundancy from the grid. If the grid goes down, you could have everybody retain all their power just by having a whole bunch of microgrids operating.
Well, this is the model I think that's going to take over in the future.
Yeah.
Just by default.
Well, certainly I think microgrids will take over in the future. I don't know about networks of microgrids.
Oh,
but
it's
I
just
think-
inevitable. It just makes
You
too
think
much
so?
sense.
Okay. Okay, we are up to Tuesday, September 26th, and we have a picture here.
Another picture.
Another picture. This is an article from Clean Technica.
Yeah, Chinese car.
Chinese car, imagine. I didn't know they had cars in China.
BYD is the name of the company.
Yep.
It expects China to shift 100% to electrified vehicles by 2030.
Pay attention to that, folks. That's
100%.
2030 and
2030.
100%. BYD, an auto and battery manufacturer based in China, is expecting that China will shift to new energy vehicles, battery vehicles with hydrogen fuel cells and vehicles and so forth. That shift will be complete by 2030, according to recent reports. It will take slightly more than a decade to end reliance on internal combustion engines. Now, I want to point out a couple of things here, one of which is BYD, among other things, is a big electric bus manufacturer, and in fact has factories in the United States manufacturing electric buses.
Is that so? Okay.
At least one factory that I know of. Another thing is that, believe it or not, China is the biggest consumer of new cars in the world, not the United
That doesn't
States.
surprise me. I
No,
mean, they got
it's
a lot
not a
of people.
surprise. They've got a lot of people and they've got a lot of money. And of course, leadership in the United States has been passed to China, in my opinion anyway, by the Trump administration.
Well, you've mentioned that before.
By
I
the
think
American
you're right.
market. The Trump administration just made it official. You know, we're making China great again. Let's face it, folks.
I hadn't heard that one before.
Yeah.
I
I saw an article, by the way, of a MAGA hat that would make America great again. You know, the red hat with MAGA,
right.
which had been partly toasted, and it was an article about former Trump supporters who had started burning their hats,
Oh, okay.
creating air pollution in the process. Okay.
This company, BYD, I was expecting it's an acronym of, Chinese words.
Yep.
No, it comes from the phrase "build your dreams." And it's also interesting, the article I read, that besides this car, I'll put it up again,
Yeah.
that they're making in China for sale in China, they also have a deal with Daimler,
Yes.
which is the corporate name of Mercedes,
Yes.
to make a luxury car in China.
There you go.
And so it's a Chinese Mercedes.
And which will wind up, of course, being in competition with the best cars from Tesla.
It probably will.
Probably,
Yep.
at least in China. Okay, should we go on?
One other thing I also
one more
noticed.
thing.
Yeah, they are also building what they call SkyRail transport systems.
Oh, yes, they are.
Monorail, and these are not demonstrations. These are going from city
Yep.
to city.
And they're running within the cities. They can replace subways, which means that you can have a system go in at much lower cost than a subway system because you don't have to do all the excavating.
You don't have
for
to
the
dig,
tunnels.
yeah.
I used to go to school at Pratt Institute, and at the time I was there, the Myrtle Avenue L was still running.
I remember that. Yeah.
And it was a couple 100 feet or 150 feet or something from the dormitory window. And the thing went by
Made a lot of
every half
noise.
hour all night, I think in each direction. So, it was like, oh man, first 3 nights I didn't sleep at all. And then I fell in love and I didn't notice anything. Okay. Our next item is from PV Magazine USA.
Wholesale market crisis.
Sustained low wholesale power prices are driving coal, nuclear, and even gas plant retirements, pushing independent power producers into the red and spurring reforms of wholesale market structures. But even PV, photovoltaics, solar cells, are not immune to these trends. PV Magazine looks to the implications for the solar industry. And this, of course, is an article that you really have to read to get the full purport of it.
Well, the bottom line about solar and gas is if gas is cheap or cheaper than solar, solar will suffer.
Yes. And if gas is not cheaper than solar, gas will suffer.
Yeah.
And at some point, that's going to catch up with gas. And anyway, should we go on from there?
Yeah, we got another picture coming
We
up
do
there.
indeed, and this is another article from Clean Technica.
There we go. Only this is shocking.
Yes?
Only about 10% of UK's United Kingdom recoverable offshore oil and gas reserves remain. It's almost all gone.
They're
folks.
running out of gas.
Yeah.
They are running out of gas. Only about 10% of the UK's original offshore recoverable gas and oil reserves remain, according to a new study from the University of Edinburgh. At current rates of extraction, the UK's reserves will last another decade or so. Once they run out, it will be necessary for the UK to import essentially all of the fossil fuels it uses.
Well, it has been proposed that they start fracking in the UK. And this article says that ain't going to happen. It's not suitable for fracking.
Well, they've been bringing this up over and over
Yeah.
and over again. They look at what they think is the success of fracking in the United States, ignore completely the kind of misery that people are going through in fracking areas. I mean, the people in a lot of areas where fracking has been going on were promised abundance for all. You know.
Yeah, and they lied.
It reminds me of a poem by Rudyard Kipling. In the Carboniferous epic, we were promised abundance for all by robbing selected Peter to pay for collective Paul.
Huh? I never heard that one.
Yes.
That was by Kipling?
Yeah, Kipling.
Well, a while ago. He
A while ago.
He knew
that's
what
right.
was going on, didn't
Well,
he?
he was complaining at that time about socialism
Okay.
and other things. And
Yeah.
what he says is that, but you know, the money wound up being worthless, and so we all went broke. And you know, and it's a poem called "Gods of the Copybook Headings."
Well, what they're talking about here is they're thinking about fracking to solve their problems. In the article it says, fracking will be barely economically feasible
In the UK.
in the UK. Many possible sites are in densely populated areas. They have low-quality source rocks and complex geological histories. Fracking is likely to be too restricted to become an effective industry, which would require thousands of wells.
Yeah.
It ain't going to happen.
But on the other hand, they have resources that they have been developing, and the price of offshore wind power has gone into areas where its cost is competing effectively against natural gas.
Oh, sure.
And is only about 60% of the cost of nuclear. So, you know, I don't think they're going to...
They're not going to be dying, but they're not going to be fracking.
That's a good way of putting it. Okay. We are up to Wednesday, September 27th.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about because we've got 11 minutes left.
Well, that's okay. We've got 3 articles here. Yes.
The UK opens the first subsidy-free solar farm, complete with storage.
This is kind of cool, and
It
this
is.
actually says something about what we just talked about.
Which
You know,
is?
if no fracking, what are they going to do?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. British renewable energy developer Enesco. That sounds Italian, doesn't it? But it's British. You know, when I lived in the UK, I was introduced to a guy who I was told he's Italian. You know, and I met him, and he's Italian didn't mean he was born in Italy and spoke with an Italian accent, or that he acted like an Italian, or anything like that. It didn't even mean that his mother was Italian, or that his father's mother was Italian. It meant that his grandfather came from, great-grandfather maybe, came from Italy, and he had an Italian name. But you know, where I lived in Devon,
Yeah.
people from Cornwall, which is the next county over, were considered foreigners. Come to think of it, I think they are. But anyway, this came from
What do you call the people from Cornwall?
Cornwallish.
Well, they're Celts.
Well, they are Celts. There's no doubt about it.
People from Devon aren't.
People from people from Devon are Celts. They just don't know it. I read a thing about DNA, and it said the majority of the, I forget what part of the DNA it is that you can check to see, you know, where the mother came from, where the father came from. The matrilinear stuff in the UK was primarily Celtic. So the majority of the English is Celtic.
Do have Celtic roots.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at the English royal family.
They're Germans.
Well, that's what they tell you. But the English royal family, the first of the English kingdoms that created the England was Wessex. And the first king of Wessex was a man whose name was Cerdic, which is a Welsh name.
Okay.
I think yes, that's a Welsh name. It means beloved.
Uh-huh.
In Welsh.
Okay.
So how did this German guy get a Welsh name as at the head of a group of German people?
So before they were Germans, they were Welsh.
No, they were a bunch of Germans led by a person who was Welsh.
Oh,
that's
okay.
that's what I think. Anyway, we've got
It's
this.
complicated, doesn't it?
Where are we? We were talking about
UK opens first subsidy-free farm.
Yes, British, and this is such an interesting article, and I'm talking about the Welsh. British renewable energy developer Enesco has officially unveiled the UK's first subsidy-free solar farm. Located in the southern English county of Bedfordshire, the 10-megawatt Clay Hill solar farm is the UK's first ground-mounted installation to operate without any form of government support. But interestingly, it's doing this with battery backup.
Right. Which tilted the economic.
It can only tilt the economics behind this if that battery is really inexpensive.
Yeah. And batteries apparently are getting that way.
So the value of electricity, the electricity from solar is becoming supplanted by electricity from solar plus battery.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, but it's not good news for fracking.
Not at all. Well, solar and batteries, and all of a sudden you got baseload power.
Oh yeah, there you go. Okay.
Interesting thing about this, because the industry has been, how would you say it, attacking these subsidies. And the industry that has been attacking these subsidies has been subsidized for 100 years.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is renewable subsidies have to go, but petroleum subsidies can stay.
Yes. And don't think for a moment that isn't true. Because
Well, it is true, unfortunately.
I know. Well, there are people
but
out
the
there who
subsidies
say,
supposedly are put there to encourage new technologies.
yes.
And when the new technology has arrived, as it apparently has here, subsidies go away. What's wrong with that?
Nothing wrong with that. So logically, we should have subsidies for the new technologies, and we should take the people who are blocking them. And you know, according to that MIT study, we talked about it, 200,000 Americans are killed every year by air pollution produced by fossil fuels.
Yes, we've talked about that in several times in several different ways.
How many years were we involved in the Second World War?
5? 6?
4.
4. Okay.
Yeah. 1941 to 1945, and it actually is a little bit less than 4 years. 275,000 Americans, I'm sorry, read a different estimate today, 400,000 Americans were killed in that 4 years. So we're losing people to air pollution from fossil fuels about twice as fast
I was just
as
going
we
to say
lost.
we're about double that.
Yeah,
And you don't think about it.
When you increase, talk about increasing the number per capita, it comes to, we're losing people to fossil fuels about as fast on a per capita basis as we lost soldiers and sailors during the Second World War.
Well, it's easy to think of a death when there's a bullet involved.
Yeah.
And it's harder to think of the death when the death is caused by illness, because you don't think about what caused the illness.
Yep. Okay, we're using up our time fast.
Well, we
should
got
move
plenty
on.
of time left. So
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes to talk about.
we got an image coming up too.
Yeah, we do, and I've already
It's a
put it up
nice
on the
image.
monitor.
Nice image.
And this item is from the BBC.
And that is a weather satellite going up.
It sure is.
Where will the deadly floods strike next?
This is an interesting article. Record hurricanes and rains have struck throughout the world, bringing chaos to many places. There are many indicators of more storms and persistent rainfall events coming with climate change. But more accurate data, computer modeling, and machine learning are giving us a clearer picture of which areas are most likely to be affected. And what they're saying there is that we can figure out in advance where the problems are going to be.
Yeah, they're saying they now have computerized modeling where they can get a pretty good idea about where it's going to happen
And
next.
this is the same computer modeling system that is used for just general weather forecasting.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, weather forecasts were appallingly bad.
Well, they've gotten a lot better.
They've got a lot better. In those days, if a weather forecaster stuck his head out the window and said, tomorrow's weather will be, and then described what he saw, he would have been more likely to be correct than he was. Today, weather forecasts are getting better. Anyway,
we touched base on this last week, I think.
Yep.
And basically, they said we can predict the weather pretty well using these algorithms.
Yep.
They also work for climate.
Yes. Okay, our last piece is from the Recorder. This is a Greenfield Recorder in Greenfield, Massachusetts.
Local interest.
Yes.
Town saves big with Greenfield Light and Power program.
According to the Greenfield, Massachusetts Mayor's Office, residents and businesses enrolled in the Greenfield Light and Power program have saved a total of $208,000 in the first half of 2017, and the municipal electricity accounts have saved $35,000. It is noteworthy that the savings will all come while customers are using 100% green electricity.
Well, it's interesting. In Greenfield, the customers have a choice of signing on to this program for green electricity
100%.
or getting the regular electricity, which isn't green.
Yeah.
And as it stands now, the regular electricity is a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, so you can save money by going to 100% green power.
And yet, again, it's a small number. Some people in Greenfield are buying the more expensive, dirty electricity.
Yeah, well.
Why? Is it a Chinese hoax?
I think it is, yes. I think they have been hoaxed by China and possibly a hoax-worthy president of the United States. Anyway,
we're down to about 2 minutes, so we killed that time pretty quick.
We could do that in Vermont. We could get 100% green electricity. The problem in Vermont is that we have to recognize that in addition to getting all of our electricity covered by 100% renewables, which we're getting close to, we have to get all of our transportation, all of our heat, and all of our industrial operations that can be done this way from green power. And that means that we heat with electricity and we drive electric vehicles, or we take electric buses.
It's coming.
It's coming.
It is coming.
Yeah.
But we drive a lot because we have to, just because of our geography. There's
It's
very
true.
little public transportation in Vermont.
That's true. Very little public transportation, and that's something that we could push for to make things better.
Well, one thing we could do, what Greenfield did, we could do in Brattleboro. Because all of this that's happening is basically all being done on paper.
Yeah.
They're not.
Well, we'd
piping
have to
in.
make a deal with Green Mountain Power to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we should probably say goodbye.
Well, let's bring us up so that
There
we
we
can.
are. So goodbye until next week. We hope you rejoin us. And until then, have a wonderful time.
Still